I only have one that I use. I never checked the other one.
Okay. Well, try using another email address and see if that works.
Okay.
Okay.
I will
We could
try and I'll
definitely
give
try
it
that.
to you on Friday.
Sounds good.
Thank you,
Unless
Stuart.
could it be going to spam?
Or you could text it to me and I'll add it in before Friday and we'll see if you get Friday's email.
Okay, I'll do that.
Okie dokie. So let's start share and let's remember where we were holding last week. Okay. 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 So what we learned up until now is that according to Rabbi Yehuda, a man who experienced seminal emission is allowed to speak the blessings, both the blessings of the Shema and the blessing before Shema and the blessing before the food and the grace after meals after the food. Rabbi Nachman Bar Yitzchak said a different reason why Rabbi Yehuda could say that you say these blessings. Rabbi Nachman Bar Yitzchak said Rabbi Yehuda's statement in the Mishnah should be interpreted a different way.
Oh, yeah, but I'm not on the bed.
Rabbi Yehuda rendered these blessings like Hilchot Derech Eretz. What is the halachas of Derech Eretz? We're going to learn soon.
Hello? Hello?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, we're here. I'm just trying to figure something out because I think that we're going to learn soon. What does it mean, the laws of Derech Eretz? So Derech Eretz usually means, it could be, Derech Eretz could refer to many different things. So we're gonna define that soon. But according to some sages, the laws of Derech Eretz, which is the laws of being a mensch, which according to some sages were not considered to be in the same category as all other matters of Torah, and therefore one is permitted to engage in their study even after having experienced a seminal emission. As it was taught in a brisa. It is written, and you shall impart them to your children and your children's children. This is an inference that we've learned already a few times. This is the source that someone who has experienced a seminal emission may not study Torah. You shall impart them to your children and your children's children, and it is written thereafter, the day that you stood before the Lord your God at Horeb, which is Mount Sinai. Just as below, the revelation at Sinai was in reverence, fear, quaking, and trembling. So too here, in every generation, the Torah must be studied with a sense of reverence, fear, quaking, and trembling. From here, the stages stated. Zavim, which is men who have an unusual flow. A leper, and those who have engaged in intercourse with menstruating women, despite their severe impurity, are permitted to read from the Torah, the prophets, and the writings, the 24 books of the scripture, and to study the Mishnah, and the Gemara, and the Halachot, which is the laws, and the Agada, which is like the Medrash. However, those who experienced a seminal emission are prohibited from doing so. The reason for this distinction, in other words, is someone who experienced a seminal emission is much stronger than, or much stricter than someone who is either sick or a leper or had intercourse with a menstruating woman. The reason for this distinction is that the cases of severe impurity are caused by ailment or other circumstances beyond his control. And as a result, they do not necessarily preclude a sense of reverence and awe as he studies his Torah. This, however, is not the case with regards to impurity resulting from a seminal emission, which usually comes about due to frivolity and a lack of reverence and awe. Therefore, it is inappropriate for one who experiences a seminal emission to engage in matters of Torah. There's extra word there. To engage in matters of Torah. Therefore, even though one who experiences a seminal emission is a less severe impurity, but we're stricter with him because when you're coming to study Torah, you have to come with the right mindset. However, there are many opinions concerning the precise parameters of the Torah matters which are prohibited by this decree. Rabbi Yossi says, one who experienced the seminal emission could study the Mishnah that he is accustomed to study, as long as he does not expound on a new Mishnah to study it in depth. In other words, you can review all the Mishnah. Rabbi Yonatan ben Yosef says, he could expound upon the Mishnah, but do not expound upon the Gemara, because that's a much more in-depth analysis. Rabbi Natan ben Avishalom says, he may even expound upon the Gemara as long as he does not utter the mentions of God's name therein. Rabbi Yochanan the Cobbler, who was a student of Rabbi Akiva, he said in the name of Rabbi Akiva that one who experiences a seminal emission may not enter into the homiletic interpretation, the midrash, of any of the verses. Some say that according to Rabbi Akiva, he may not enter the study hall at all. Rabbi Yehuda says he may study only the laws of Derech Eretz. In terms of the problem raised above, apparently Rabbi Yehuda considers the legal status of the blessings to be parallel to the legal status of the laws of Derech Eretz, and therefore one may utter them orally. These were not precluded when the decree was made against someone who has experienced a seminal emission studying Torah that did not include these laws or the blessings. The Gemara relates an incident involving Rabbi Yehuda himself. He was walking down the riverbank with his disciples. Rabbi Yehuda himself, who experienced the seminal emission and was walking along the riverbank with his disciples. It doesn't say that it happened while he was walking along the riverbank. Perhaps the night before he had been with his wife, and in the morning he had not yet gone to immerse himself in the mikvah, and he's walking along the riverbank with his disciples. His disciples said to him, Rabbi, teach us a chapter from the laws of Derech Eretz. Because Rabbi Yehuda maintains that even in a state of this impurity, it is permitted to learn from Derech Eretz. Which is also an important thing. We're going to learn more about this later as we go on. But there's a certain awkwardness and shame is not the right word. Quietness, which is appropriate when we're talking about certain subjects, as part of modesty. It's also important to teach our children and to teach our students not to be ashamed. There were some of the greatest rabbis. They would tell a student, come home with me because my daughter-in-law is in the house, so I need to have another man with me in the house. To remind the students that no one is above sin. And it's okay to be a human being. So apparently they knew somehow that he was impure. Maybe he told them. And so they said, well, according to you, you can still teach us from the laws of Derech Eretz. As he maintains that even in a state of impurity, that is permitted. So he went into the mikvah, into the river. He immersed himself in the river, and then he taught them the laws of Hilchas Derech Eretz. They said to him, did you not teach us, our teacher, that he may study the laws of Derech Eretz? He said to them, Although I am lenient with others and allow them to study it without immersion, I am stringent with myself. Further elaborating on the issue of Torah study while in a state of impurity, it was taught in a brisa that Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira would say matters of Torah cannot become ritually impure. Therefore, one who is impure is permitted to engage in Torah study. And he implemented this law, this halacha, in practice. The Gemara relates an incident involving a student who was reciting Mishnahs and Brisas hesitantly before the study of Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. The student had experienced a seminal emission, and when he was asked to recite, he did so in a rushed and uneven manner because he did not want to utter the words of Torah explicitly. Rabbi Yehuda said to him, "My son, open your mouth and let your words illuminate, as matters of Torah do not become ritually impure. As it is stated, is not my word like fire, says the Lord? Just like a fire cannot become ritually impure, so too matters of Torah cannot become ritually impure." So from here we see, I'm going to teach you a general principle. It could be that we've been through this before. It could be that we've not. When we want to know now, so we have 5 or 6 different opinions about whether someone who experienced the seminal emission, what are they allowed to say or what are they not allowed to say? Are they allowed to study Torah? So how do we know which one is the final decision? So one of the finalities, if I may use that word, if the Talmud brings a story, then that story is usually binding. In other words, because we're finishing this discussion with the story where the rabbi told his students, open your mouth and start saying words of Torah even though you have experienced the seminal emission, that is proof that this is the final decision. In the brisa that we said before, one of the opinion was that one who is impure because of a seminal emission could expound upon the Mishnah but not upon the Gemara. The Gemara notes this statement supports the opinion of Rabbi Eloi, because Rabbi Eloi said that Rav Acha Bar Yaakov said in the name of Rabbeinu, which is Rav. Rav was a pair together with Shmuel. Rav and Shmuel, they were the heads of the Jewish people. They were just after the Mishnah was already codified, and they were the beginning of the era of the Talmud, of the Gemara. So he is quoted as having said, the halacha is that one who experienced the seminal emission may expound upon the Mishnah, but may not expound upon the Gemara. And this dispute is parallel in a Tanaitic dispute. In other words, the same argument that we're having here, the scholars of the Talmud, is also parallel, and we can trace it back to an argument that is found in the Mishnah with the Tanaim, the authors of the Mishnah, or the sages of the times of the Mishnah. As it was taught in the Mishnah, one who experienced the seminal emission expounds upon the Mishnah but does not expound upon the Gemara. That is a statement of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yehuda ben Gamliel said in the name of Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel, both this and that are prohibited. In other words, he's not allowed to study the Mishnah or the Gemara. And some people say that that's not what he said. Well, really what he said is that both this and that are permitted, that he may study the Gemara and the Mishnah. Comparing these opinions, the one who said that both this and that are prohibited, that someone who has experienced the seminal emission is not allowed to learn not the Mishnah or the Gemara, holds in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan the Cobbler. And the one who said that both of these are permitted, that he may study the Mishnah and the Gemara, holds in the accordance with Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. Summarizing the halacha, the final conclusion. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak said, The universally accepted practice is in accordance with the opinions of these three elders. In accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Eloi with regards to the laws of the first shearing, in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yeshua with regard to the laws of a prohibited diverse kinds, and in accordance with Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira with regards to matters of Torah. So, what are these three things? What is the first shearing? What are the diverse kinds? And we're finalizing over here that the halacha, the final law, so in addition to the story that we already said, he says that the final halacha is, according to Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, who says that one may study the Mishnah and the Talmud after experiencing a seminal emission, even before he goes to the mikveh. So, does anybody want to tell us what is the law of the first shearing? The law of the first shearing is that it says in the Torah, Reishis, is the beginning of your shearing. You have to give your first shearings to Kohen. So,
What if you are a Kohen?
what is the opinion of... Sorry, what if you are a Kohen? It's a good question. I don't remember if they're allowed to keep it or if they have to give it to a different Kohen. It's a good question. So the Gemara is now going to elaborate. In accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Eloi with regard to the first shearing, as is taught in a brayso, the Rabbi Eloi says, the obligation to set aside the first shearing from the sheep for the priest is only practiced in Eretz Yisrael, in the land of Israel, and not in the diaspora. And that is the accepted practice. What is the law of diverse kinds in terms of plants? So there's a biblical prohibition against planting grain in the vineyard, because the two plants will get nourishment from each other, and then we are mixing and matching and ruining that which God has given us, not keeping it pure to the way that God created the world. So the same thing applies also, that we're not allowed to plant any different kind of species together.
So what about something like hybrid fruits?
So a Jew, definitely in the land of Israel, and in the diaspora, I believe a Jew is not supposed to either, but we're going to get soon. A Jew is not supposed to create a hybrid fruit. Once you have the hybrid fruit, you're allowed to plant the seeds of it, but you're not allowed to create a hybrid fruit.
What about like a mule, for example? Mule.
A Jew is not allowed to breed a mule. A Jew may work a mule, but a Jew may not breed a mule. There's a very interesting story with a mule. Should we pause for a minute and go through the story?
Sure.
It's a short story with a good lesson. Rabbi, I forget which rabbi it was. It might have been Rabbi Akiva. Was once, I had this in my weekly email at some point last year. He was once meeting there was a certain Roman aristocrat who appreciated his wisdom. And no, it was a certain heretic that was asking Rabbi Yosei many different questions. Now, all of these questions were deep parables, but there was something about how do you make an egg float? And he said, well, you fill it up with dew, and then in the morning, when the dew floats back up, the egg will float together with it. There are a whole bunch of these interesting, random conversations. So this heretic asked Rabbi Yosei, how do you preserve salt?
How
What do you
preserve
say?
what?
How do you preserve salt? How do you preserve salt?
Salt.
It doesn't need to be preserved. It's salt.
Uh-huh. Well, that's not what Rabbi Yosef answered him. Rabbi Yosef answered him, you stick it in the afterbirth of a mule. And the heretic responded, a mule can't give birth. And Rabbi Yosef answered him, salt doesn't need to be preserved. So what was going on here was much deeper than that. What was going on here is that the heretic was asking Rabbi Yosef, how can you modernize the Torah to make it more attractive for the youth? And Rabbi Yosef said, okay, well, what you're saying is basically the Torah, we're going to compare it to a donkey. It's slow, but it's steady, and it carries the burden. And it goes, and it plods along, and it keeps going, as they say, like a donkey to its burden. But it's not fast, and it's not beautiful. So what you're saying is, let's mix a little bit of horse into it. Let's mix a little bit of horse in the Torah. Let's make the Torah handsome and fast and tall, and then it will be beautiful. The problem is that what's going to end up happening is you'll land with a mule. A mule does not have offspring. And it might look nice for this generation, but because it's not pure Torah, by next generation it'll already be gone. And don't worry about the Torah can preserve itself. So that's the story of the mule. Okay. What is the law in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yoshia with regard to diverse kinds? As it is written, you shall not sow your vineyard with diverse kinds. Rabbi Yoshia says, this means that one who sows diverse kinds is not liable by biblical law until he sows wheat or barley and a grape pit with a single hand motion, meaning that while sowing in the vineyard, he violates the prohibition of diverse kinds that applies to seeds and to the vineyard simultaneously. In order to be culpable for the biblical prohibition, a person has to put that the seeds and the vine should be planted at the same time. However, if there's a vineyard and one plants grain in that vineyard, it would not be the biblical prohibition, though it is still prohibited. And in accordance with Rabbi Yehuda ben Beteira, And in accordance with Rabbi Yehuda ben Beteira with regard to one who experiences a seminal emission, is permitted to engage in matters of Torah. As it was taught in a Brisa, Rabbi Yehuda ben Beteira says, matters of Torah do not become ritually impure. The Gemara relates, when Zeiri came from Eretz Yisrael to Babylonia, he succinctly capsulated this halacha, this law, and said, they abolished ritual immersion. And some say that he said they abolished the ritual washing of the hands. And the Gemara explains, the one who says that they abolished immersion, he holds in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira that one who experienced the seminal emission is not required to immerse. Not that they said that people don't have to go to immerse anymore. Rather, they said that even if a person has experienced the seminal emission, he is not required to immerse. And the one who says that they abolished the washing of the hands holds in accordance with that which Rav Chisda cursed one who goes out of his way to seek water at the time of prayer. In other words, there is a custom to wash our hands before we pray. In addition to washing our hands in the morning, and in addition to washing our hands before we eat bread, there are those who are supposed to try and wash your hands before we pray. Rav Chisda found someone who, instead of going to pray, he started looking for water. Everyone else is starting their prayers, and he's going and looking for water. And Rav Chisda said, No good. If you want to wash your hands before prayer, get there early to wash your hands in time before prayer. Don't start looking for water now when it's time to be praying. When it's time to pray, you pray. The sages taught in a brisa, one who experienced the seminal emission, who had 9 kav. How much is that in American? What? I don't know what this is. Sorry. Let's find our place again. I'm not sure what is. So 9 kav, let's see in today's how many liters is 9 kav? Kav conversion chart. There we go.
Is that
5 liters.
is that
5
an Israeli
liters.
thing, Kav? I never heard of that.
No, it's a biblical.
Measurement?
I shouldn't say biblical. I should say it's a
Ancient?
a halachic amount, a measure, halachic measure
A volume or length
of
or
liquid.
liquid? So yeah.
Of liquid. So a kav, 1 kav is 11 liters? No, that doesn't make sense. Convert 9 kav.
It's a herd. A little herd.
Here, U.S. measure. 1 kav is 370 ounces, 2.4 gallons. No, it can't be. Okay, 1 second. Let's go back over here. Here. He says that 1 kav is approximately a half a liter, a little bit more than a half a liter. So 9 kav would be 5 liters, 5.18 liters, which would be about 1.25 gallons. A quarter of a gallon is a pint. How much is a quarter of a gallon?
1 quart.
A quart. So about 5 quarts. Okay. So one who experienced the seminal emission, who had 5 quarts of drawn water poured over him, that is sufficient to render him ritually pure, and he need not immerse himself in a ritual bath. In other words, if a person experienced the seminal emission, he doesn't have to actually go to a regular mikvah, but it's enough to take a shower, a 2-minute shower, 3-minute shower, whatever it is, depending on where you live and how much water comes out of your shower head. So that would be enough. Take a shower, and he does not need to go to the mikvah. The Gemara relates, Nachum of Gamzu whispered this halacha to Rabbi Akiva, and Rabbi Akiva whispered it to his student Ben Azai. And then Ben Azai went out and taught it to his students publicly in the marketplace. 2 Amoraim, the Amoraim are the sages of the times of the Talmud. Rabbi Yosef bar Avin, they were in Eretz Yisrael. Rabbi Yosef bar Avin and Rabbi Yosef bar Zavida disagreed as to the correct version of the conclusion of the incident. One of them said that Ben Azai taught it to his students in the market, and the other taught Ben Azai also whispered it to his students. In other words, he said, better to go to the mikvah. If you can't go to the mikvah, you can take a shower instead. But again, this is not for regular things that would need a mikvah. This is only for a man who experienced the seminal emission.
Rabbi,
Yeah,
does the mikveh have continual water running through it?
that is a very good question. Does the mikveh have continuous water running through it? The answer is, let's pause here for a second. I'm going to stop the share so I can see everyone better. And then we'll get back into that. So a mikveh in a building, right, in today's mikvahs, so the water has to be completely pure rainwater that cannot have been contained in any vessel before it got to the actual mikveh. And if the mikveh has running water, in other words, if there's a filter that's pumping the water through the system, that would not be a kosher mikveh. There is, however, a time when running water would be permissible to use as a mikveh, and that is if it's a natural stream of water. So let's say you're on the top of a mountain, and there's not rainwater, but an actual stream that comes from, or it doesn't have to be a mountain. If you have a natural stream that's coming out of the earth, which is a spring, not rainwater, but a spring. One who immerses in the spring, that water could be moving.
Mm-hmm.
Does that
So
answer your question?
in modern mikvahs, does that still hold true? That has to be rainwater?
Yeah. So usually what will happen is, let me see if I can create a whiteboard here. The laws of mikvah are extremely complex, and I will not consider myself an expert in them. What I will say is
So there's no mikvahs in Arizona.
Sorry?
So there's no mikvahs in Arizona.
Right.
Oh,
Or
it's a good
Nevada.
question. A good
For that
question.
matter, a
1
lot of
second.
parts of Israel.
Okay. Here's my whiteboard. Does everyone see the whiteboard?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So here we have a whiteboard. So there are ways. In other words, the water cannot be the rainwater cannot be in a container until it gets into the pit of the mikvah. So usually what you'll have is you'll have a bottom here. You'll have on the bottom what they call it a pit, which is big enough for the size of a mikvah. That is what will be filled up with water. It's about usually 2 feet tall and 3 feet wide, somewhere around there. Then on top of it, you'll have the pool where the people go inside, which is a nice big spa-like pool. And there'll be a hole in the floor where the two waters touch. So the water that's in the top pool gets purified by the water that's in the bottom pool. Or sometimes the small pool will be on the side, and there'll be a hole in between.
And the water on top comes from where?
The water on top can be regular city water. Zaman, remind me your question again.
I was wondering.
What if you're in a place where it doesn't rain?
So if you're in a place where it doesn't rain, one option is just to dig and dig and dig and dig until you find a spring. Another option is to wait until it does rain. Another option is is a milk crate considered a container for water?
Container's a container.
Container is a container, but does a milk crate contain water?
Is it pure enough?
Sorry?
Is it clean enough?
A milk crate, not a milk carton, a milk crate, like the big plastic milk crates with lots and lots of big holes.
Oh.
Right, so that's not considered a container.
No, it's not a container because it's got a lot of holes in it. I mean,
Exactly.
It's not a liquid container.
But if you take snow or ice and put it into milk crates, and then you empty those milk crates into the pit, and you wait a few weeks for it to melt, then you have your rainwater without having gone into any kind of a vessel.
I mean, a place that doesn't get rain also probably isn't going to get snow.
Right, but you can put them on a truck, on a flatbed truck, and ship it from out of state. I'm not sure what they do. It's a good question. What do they do? But that's the general way how mikvah works. But the laws of building a mikvah are very complex. If you don't have a professional that this is what they do all day, it's very easy to make a mistake that will render the entire mikvah not kosher. I know people who have spent many hundreds of thousands of dollars on a mikvah and forgot to bring the consultants back in the middle of the construction. And they ended up with a not kosher mikvah that cost a lot more to undo the mistake that they made.
And what about modern health standards like chlorine and that kind of stuff?
So
Filters.
the top pit, that's the top water, can be filtered, can be chlorinated, can be oxidized, can be heated. Now the bottom one could probably be also heated, but usually, so what happens is you have the bottom thing, which is the wholly pure water, and then the top water is usually able, you can do as you wish with to keep it safe and sanitary.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so now the Gemara is going to explain the rationale between the two versions of the incident. If Ben Azai teach it to his students publicly in the marketplace that they need to take a shower, they don't need to go to the mikveh, or did he whisper it to his students? So the Gemara explains the rationale behind the two versions of this incident. The sage who taught that Ben Azai taught the law openly in the market held that the leniency was due to concern that the halachas requiring ritual immersion would promote dereliction in the study of Torah. In other words, if someone was with his wife the night before, and then in the morning he has to go to schlep himself to the mikveh, but it's cold winter's day, so instead of going to the study hall, he'll start, schmoozing with his friends. So we don't want that to happen. You're wasting time from studying Torah. Therefore, he publicized that you don't have to go to the mikveh, you can take a shower of a 5-liter shower, a 5-quart shower, and that's enough for this case. The ruling of Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira eases the way for an individual who experienced the seminal emission, or a 19-year-old kid who has never, it happens sometimes at night, who experienced the seminal emission to study Torah. This was also due to concern that the halachas requiring ritual immersion would promote the suspension of procreation. Let's say someone's in the middle of an intense, how do you say sugya? In the middle of a conversation, in the middle of a concept that they're delving into. And he wants to be there right on time in the morning in order to make sure that he's going to be there to continue this, to pick up where they left off yesterday. At nighttime, he's not going to want to be with his wife because he doesn't want to have to wait in the morning to go to the mikveh so that he can go to study. So there's a concern that the halachas requiring ritual immersion would promote the suspension of procreation, as one might abstain from marital relations to avoid the immersion required after. Therefore, he said it's good to publicize. You take your 5-quart shower, and then you can study Torah. And the sage who taught that Ben Azai only whispered this halacha to his students held that he did so in order that Torah scholars would not be with their wives like roosters. I'm not sure if you've ever learned anything about roosters, but apparently roosters are constantly shadowing over their hens. If the purification process was that simple, the Torahs would engage in sexual activity constantly, which would distract them from their studies. Therefore, it'll make it a little bit inconvenient, so that way they will spend more time studying and not be home all day and night. Okay, wishing you all a wonderful day, a happy day. And tomorrow at 11 a.m. in person over here, we are going to learn about Abraham's success. Abraham's success came from? Where did Abraham's success come from?
There's a guy?
His wife, of course. We're going to learn tomorrow how women are always right. And, sorry? Say that again?
At all of the, yeah.
What's yours?
What
did you say?
Oh.
I'm not hearing clearly. Okay? And then Saturday morning, we will be having services at 10 a.m. and a Kiddush at 11:30. So we'll love to see you tomorrow if we can. We'll love to see you Shabbos morning, Saturday morning, 10 a.m. if you can. Wishing you all a wonderful week, a healthy week, a happy week, a week of goodness and kindness. Take care and God bless you.
Well,
Thank you, Rob.
thank you. See you tomorrow.